The night my in-laws were kidnapped. My husband was getting ready to go camping with his first love. I didn't stop him at all. I just called the cops right away. Last time in my last life, I had stopped my husband from leaving, and he stayed to help rescue his parents. But because of that, he wasn't there to protect his ex. She ended up getting attacked and killed by wolves in the mountains. It was brutal. Since then, he never spoke to me again. Not until I was pregnant and close to giving birth. That's when he dragged me to the mountains. If it weren't for you, Debbie wouldn't have died. He shouted. How can you even live after what happened to Denise? I want to see you suffer the same pain she went through. That night, beasts tore my body apart, taking my life with my baby. But then I woke up. I was back on the day my in-laws were kidnapped. This time my husband didn't join the rescue. He went after his first love instead. But when he came back, he was never the same again. The memory of my death jolted me awake screaming. My whole body was drenched in sweat, and I could still feel the pain of my flesh being torn apart. My hands instinctively went to my stomach. It was flat now. I listened to my heartbeat and tears poured down my face, unstoppable. I reached for my phone, fumbling to check the time I was alive again. I was back to the day my in-laws were taken. Soon the kidnapper would call demanding $5 million in half an hour, or they'd kill my in-laws. My husband and I grew up together. Our parents arranged our marriage when we were kids. Basically, a baby date that everyone expected would turn into marriage someday. Whether it was a family arrangement or my feelings, I was meant to be his wife. I knew he had an ex-girlfriend, but his parents disapproved of her. Before the wedding, I'd even asked him, "Are you marrying me because you love me? Is this what you want?" He said yes, and I entered into the wedding believing him. But after the wedding, he was distant. He never let go of his ex, still sneaking around with her. I acted like I didn't catch him. I didn't confront him. I loved him too much to lose him or our marriage. But because of that, I lost my life and the baby I had carried for 10 months. This time that I've been given another chance to live, I won't make the same mistake. I looked up and saw Anthony, my husband, running down the stairs. Slowly, I stood up from the couch. When our eyes met, he said, "I won't be home tonight." I didn't say a word. I just glanced at the phone by the couch. The kidnapper's call was coming as soon as it rang. I quickly answered and put it on speaker. "If you still want to see your dear Winston and Adele alive," a rough voice began, "bring $5 million to Hopewell Square. You have 30 minutes. Don't call the cops or I'll kill these two old hags on the spot." The kidnapper's words reached Anthony's ears. He frowned slightly but then let out a scoff. "Seriously, Denise? You think this is funny? Do you enjoy getting them to help you put on some kind of stupid show? All the time?" I stared at his face, remembering how he stood and watched when I died in my last life. The love I had for him for more than a decade had long disappeared. "Anthony, you heard the call. Do what you want. I won't stop. You think it's an act? If you want. I don't care. But let me make one thing clear. I'm not playing some games here with your parents." Maybe I sounded too calm, because he hesitated for a second. In the end though, he turned around and walked out without looking back. In my last life, when he got the call, he also thought it was just pretending. But I knew his parents were really missing. So I tried everything I could to stop him from leaving. That night, we searched endlessly and eventually we rescued his parents. But after that, he left. When he came back, he brought the news that his ex was dead. Anthony blamed it all on me. After he stormed out, I called the cops right away. $5 million is no small amount and the kidnapper wanted it in cash. I couldn't get it ready right away. Besides, even if the kidnapper got the ransom, there was no guarantee they'd let my in-laws go. I had to call the cops and let the experts handle the situation. After I dialed 911, they said they'd send cops over. But before they even arrived, my phone rang. It was someone I knew. "Hey, it's Rich. Did you and Anthony have a fight or something?" I frowned and asked flatly, "Why are you calling me?" "Well, you called the cops, didn't you? Look, I know you're mad at Anthony, but filing a fake report, that's taking things too far. You shouldn't act so petty like this." I didn't say anything. Just let him ramble. "Listen, Anthony and Debbie, they don't have anything going on. But now you're making a scene over nothing. Seriously, you're embarrassing him." After listening for a while, I finally understood what he was implying. "You're telling me," Anthony said, "I filed a fake report." There was silence on the other end of the line. In response to my question, I chuckled and said in a low voice, "Bitch, let me give you some advice. Start doing your job. Dispatch officers over. If you don't, I'll report you too." He snorted. "Denise, don't think I'm like Anthony, always letting you boss him around. I'm not your family's freaking servant." Then he added, "Crazy woman. Even a single strand of Debbie's hair is better than you." I hung up without another word. Then I called the police department where Rich was stationed, and made sure to report him this time. Another team of officers arrived about 10 minutes later. They asked me some questions. and listened to the recording of my earlier phone call. Their faces turned serious. I tried tracing the number the kidnapper used, but it wasn't registered. And when they called it back, the phone was already off. There was nothing we could do but wait for the kidnapper to call again. While the cops worked, I called my financial manager. How much cash in my accounts can I withdraw right now? My financial manager checked and I replied, 3 million. Okay, get it ready. Then I called Anthony's uncle. I told him that his brother and sister-in-law had been kidnapped. He gasped. What? Who would do this? Where's Anthony? I don't know who they are. Anthony's off camping with Debbie. Uncle Joe, the kidnapper wants 5 million in cash. I don't have enough. Can you help me? I'll pay you back in a week. Silly girl. You're saving my brother. Don't talk about paying me back. How much do you need? 2 million. Got it. I'll take care of it. Half an hour passed quickly and the phone rang again. I grabbed it immediately and the technician started tracing the call. But one of them shook his head. The location couldn't be tracked. My heart sank. On the other end, a harsh voice snapped, time's up. Is the money ready? I haven't got all of it yet. I said quickly, please give me a little more time. My husband isn't here, and I don't have that much cash on hand. I told you already, no ransom. No Winston, no Adele. I'll kill them. Wait. Please don't hurt them, I hurriedly begged. You want money, don't you? Killing them won't get you anything. Why go through it all taking the two of them? If in the end you won't get what you want, please just give me 30 more minutes. I swear I'll have the rest by then. As soon as I finished speaking, I heard raw, desperate cries of pain. It was my in-laws. The kidnapper's sinister voice followed. 30 more minutes. If you're late again, say goodbye to their 5 fingers. He scoffed, adding, and if you're trying to buy time, go ahead and see what that gets you. Just like that, the call ended. When I turned toward the door, Rich was standing there. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. He'd heard everything. Anthony called me. Rich hesitated, but he explained. He said his mom and dad were just helping you make a scene. To keep him at home. Gosh. I didn't even have the energy to argue. Officer Chavez. One of the officers next to me cut through the awkward silence. Sir, you should call him. Let him know what's going on. Rich nodded and stepped aside. Phone in hand. I could hear the faint sound of his dial tone. But the line was busy. My mind wandered to my mother-in-law. Soft, fragile demeanor. She was the kind of woman who'd cry for someone to blow on her finger, if it was scalded by tea. Now God only knows what kind of pain she was enduring. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself, and quickly dialed Anthony's uncle. But no luck. His line was busy too. Minutes dragged by before my phone lit up again. It was Anthony's uncle calling back. Before I could ask if he'd managed to gather the money, he sighed and said, Denise, I've got to say this. How could you stage something like this to fool your husband's parents? Look, I get that they treat you like their own daughter, but you should be the one persuading them to be more reasonable. Good grief. I nearly had a heart attack. Good thing I asked Anthony after I heard about this. That moment I felt completely hopeless. Uncle, are you saying Anthony told you this? This was all fake. My voice trembled. Fine, don't believe me. But can you get in touch with my in-laws? Because I can't and the cops are here right now. There was a long sigh on the other end of the line. Then another sigh. Anthony has someone else. Denise, listen. If it's too much to bear, just divorce him. It'll set you both free. I hung up without another word. Meanwhile, Rich had finally reached Anthony. Bro, you need to come back. Rich said, his voice urgent. Your parents might really have been kidnapped. But the voice that responded wasn't Anthony. It was Debbie's. Rich. Oh, come on. Are you playing along with Denise's drama, too? Your brother's busy grilling beef. Hold on, I'll get him. I heard her call out to Anthony in the background. But he didn't even take the phone. He just muttered to her, hang up. That lunatic just doesn't let anyone live in peace. And then the line went dead. Rich turned back to me, his brows furrowing deeply. I lowered my eyes and let out a bitter laugh. I don't know what else to do. But the kidnapper wants the ransom brought to Hopewell Square. I don't have enough, but I'll go anyway. If I'm the bait, maybe it'll give the cops a chance to catch them. Officer Chavez beside me disagreed. Ma'am, let me bring the ransom instead. I shook my head. What if he knows me? If you go, they'll know something's wrong. Just please stay close by and protect me. I'll bring it myself. With no better ideas, everyone agreed to my plan. When the kidnapper called again, I lied and told him the money was ready. I asked where to take it, promising to hand it over in exchange for my in-laws. Voice on the other end let out a cold laugh and nonchalantly replied, fine. But something about his tone made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. My instincts screamed at me, and before he could hang up, I blurted, let me hear my in-laws' voices. The man sneered. Why the rush, babe? You'll see them soon enough. With that, the call ended. Quickly, instructed my financial manager to withdraw as much cash as possible. Once the suitcase was packed, I dragged it to the location the kidnapper specified. When I arrived, another call came through. The kidnapper's voice was as sinister as ever. Leave the money and head to the underground parking lot. The old hags are waiting for you there. I didn't care about the money anymore. The cops were monitoring it. I left and rushed down to the underground parking lot. And that's when I saw it, my in-laws' car. The door was ajar. Inside they sat slumped in their seats. Their throats slashed. Blood pooled on the floor. My knees gave out and I collapsed, falling toward the car as sobs ripped through my chest. Somehow my trembling fingers managed to dial 911. Elderly throat slashed. Hopewell Square underground parking lot. Please send help quickly. I clutched my in-laws' cold hands tightly. Mom, Dad, please stay with me? Okay. The doctors are coming. I'll call Anthony. I'll make him come here right away. My poor in-laws, barely clinging to life, weakly shook their heads. Denise, my mother-in-law, whispered. After we're gone, divorce Anthony. All of our shares, properties, funds and cash will all go to you, dear. We're so sorry. I choked back a sob and shook my head frantically. No. You don't have to apologize, Mom. It's my fault. I didn't get the money fast enough. I wasted too much time. She gave me a faint smile. Oh, sweetie, don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. The kidnappers, they never intended to let us live. I kept calling Anthony over and over. The phone rang, but no one answered. Desperate, I sent him a message on Telegram. Anthony, your parents are badly hurt. Come back immediately. But the message seemed to vanish into the void. No reply. I kept calling, kept messaging, until his mom and dad slowly closed their eyes for the last time. And still Anthony hadn't replied. The ambulance arrived, but it was too late. There was nothing they could do. I stood up. The world spinning around me. Everything fading to black. I grabbed the car door to steady myself, only to feel someone supporting me. I turned to see one of the officers accompanying me. Ma'am, he said softly. The ransom wasn't taken. The kidnapper who came to collect it fell from a height during the chase and is currently unconscious. He paused, then added, I'm sorry for your loss. The sterile, chemical smell of the hospital morgue was a stark contrast to the metallic tang of blood that still clung to my clothes. I sat on a hard plastic chair in the hallway, staring at my hands. The blood had dried into dark, cracked flakes against my skin. Officer Chavez walked out of the double doors, his expression grim. He handed me a cup of lukewarm water. I didn't drink it. I just let the heat seep into my freezing palms. The medical examiner is finished, Chavez said softly. I'm so sorry, Denise. I nodded slowly. The tears had stopped. In their place was a hollow, echoing void, rapidly filling with a cold, jagged ice. In my previous life, I had died, screaming in the woods, my body ripped apart by wild animals, while my husband blamed me for the death of his mistress. I had traded my life to save his parents, and my reward had been betrayal and slaughter. This time, I had tried to save them. I had done everything right. But they had still been taken from me. The only difference was that this time their blood was entirely on Anthony's hands. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Fast, frantic, heavy. Denise. I didn't look up. I didn't need to. Anthony's voice was unmistakable. He rounded the corner, his face flushed, wearing an expensive North Face jacket that smelled faintly of campfire smoke. Right behind him, struggling to keep up in her impractical hiking boots, was Debbie. Where are they? Anthony demanded, his voice echoing in the quiet hallway. He stopped a few feet from me, panting. Uncle Joe kept calling me, spouting some nonsense. Then Rich texted me to come to the hospital. Tell me this is a joke. Tell me they're just upstairs in some VIP suite trying to teach me a lesson. I slowly lifted my head. My eyes locked onto his. He looked annoyed, inconvenienced. Debbie stood slightly behind him, crossing her arms, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. They aren't upstairs, I said, my voice dead and flat. Then where the hell are they? He snapped. I stood up. I didn't say a word. I just pushed open the heavy doors to the morgue. The chill of the room spilled out into the hallway. The medical examiner looked up, startled, but Officer Chavez put a hand up to let him know it was okay. There were 2 steel tables in the center of the room, 2 white sheets. Anthony froze in the doorway. The annoyance drained from his face, replaced by a sudden violent pallor. No, this is taking it too far. Mom, Dad. He marched toward the tables, his bravado returning for a fleeting second. He grabbed the edge of the first sheet and yanked it back. He didn't scream. It was worse. A horrific, guttural choking sound erupted from his throat. He staggered backward, his legs giving out, colliding with a tray of surgical instruments that crashed to the floor with a deafening clatter. His mother's face was pale, her skin like wax, the savage, jagged laceration across her throat stitched together in a grotesque imitation of a seam. "Oh my God," Debbie whispered from the doorway, slapping a hand over her mouth. She backed away, her eyes wide with genuine terror. Anthony scrambled on the floor, unable to stand, pulling himself up by the edge of his father's table. He looked at his dad's face, then collapsed entirely, curling into a fetal position on the cold tiles. "Mom. Dad. No, no, no," he sobbed, his hands pulling at his own hair. I looked down at him. I felt nothing. No pity. No shared grief. Just the cold realization that the man crying on the floor was the same man who had dragged my pregnant body to the mountains and watched me die. "I called you," I said, my voice cutting through his sobs like glass. He looked up, tears and snot streaming down his face. "I called you," I repeated. "I texted you. I begged you to come. Uncle Joe called you. Rich called you. And you told Debbie to hang up the phone because I was ruining your peace." "I didn't know," he screamed, his voice breaking. "I thought it was a trick. You're always so dramatic, always trying to control me. How was I supposed to?" "No. They died waiting for you," I said simply. Their last words weren't even about you. They were apologizing to me. "You lying bitch," he roared, suddenly scrambling to his feet, lunging at me. Before he could even close the distance, Officer Chavez had him pinned against the tiled wall. "Back off, son," Chavez growled, twisting Anthony's arm just enough to make him wince. "She's been cooperating with the police all night. She brought the ransom. She found the bodies. Where were you?" Anthony slumped against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor, again burying his face in his hands, weeping uncontrollably. Debbie hovered in the doorway, looking between Anthony and me, before quietly slipping out into the hallway. Even now, when things got ugly, she ran. The next 3 days were a blur of police statements, funeral arrangements, and an eerie, suffocating silence in the massive house I once shared with Anthony. He hadn't come home. I later found out he was staying at a hotel. He couldn't bear to look at me, and Debbie couldn't bear to look at a man who wept all night. The investigation was moving fast. The kidnapper who had fallen from the parking structure had woken up from his coma. He was looking at a double homicide charge, and to avoid the death penalty, he started talking. I was sitting in my living room, nursing a cup of black tea, when my phone rang. It was Chavez. "Denise. We got something." His voice was tight. "The guy, his name is Marcus. He's a low-level enforcer for a local gambling ring. But he didn't plan this. Says they were hired." I sat up straight. "Hired? By who?" "He doesn't know a name. But he said the client paid in crypto and knew exactly what time your in-laws would be leaving their weekly country club dinner. The client also explicitly instructed them not to release the hostages, regardless of whether the ransom was paid. They were supposed to take the money and kill them anyway. The ransom call was just a distraction to delay police intervention while they did the deed." My blood ran cold. "Killing them won't get you anything," I had said to the kidnapper on the phone. But I was wrong. Killing them got someone exactly what they wanted. "Are you tracing the crypto?" I asked. "Our cyber team is on it," Chavez said. "But there's something else. Rich wants to talk to you. He's been standing outside your gate for 2 hours." I glanced at the security monitor. Sure enough, Rich's squad car was parked on the curb, and he was leaning against it, looking miserable in the rain. "Let him stand there," I said, and hung up. 10 minutes later, I walked out to the gate holding an umbrella. Rich looked up, his face gaunt, dark bags under his eyes. He didn't have his usual arrogant swagger. "Denise," he started, his voice cracking. I'm so sorry. God, I'm so sorry." "Save it," I said flatly. "Your apologies won't bring them back. If you had done your job instead of acting like Anthony's frat boy lackey, maybe the police would have gotten to the parking garage 5 minutes earlier. Maybe they'd be alive." Rich flinched as if I had struck him. "I resigned," he whispered. "I handed in my badge this morning. Internal Affairs was already investigating me because of your complaint, but I couldn't stomach it anymore. I killed them, Denise. Me and Anthony." "No," I corrected him. "The person who hired the hit killed them. You and Anthony just held the door open." I turned to walk away, but his next word stopped me. "Denise, wait." Before I turned in my badge, I pulled some unauthorized cell tower data from the area where Anthony and Debbie were camping. I stopped and looked over my shoulder. And Anthony's phone was off most of the night. But Debbie's wasn't. She made a 3-minute call to a burner phone right around the time the kidnappers grabbed your in-laws. And then another text was sent from her phone to that same burner, 10 minutes before the kidnappers slit their throats. A heavy, suffocating silence fell between us, broken only by the sound of the rain hitting my umbrella. "Debbie," I breathed. "I can't prove what was said, Rich muttered, looking at his shoes. And I legally can't use the data since I pulled it without a warrant. But I thought, you should know who you're really dealing with. I nodded slowly. Goodbye, Rich. Don't ever come here again. I walked back into the house, my mind racing. In my past life, Debbie had been killed by wolves because Anthony stayed behind to save his parents. I had always thought it was a tragic accident. But what if it wasn't? What if in that past life, Debbie was out in the woods meeting with the very people she hired, and the wolves got to her first? It made sickening sense. Anthony's parents hated Debbie. They had threatened to cut Anthony off completely if he ever left me for her. As long as Winston and Adele were alive, Debbie would never get her hands on the family fortune. But if they died, Anthony, their only son, would inherit an empire. And Debbie would have Anthony. She had orchestrated the murder of my in-laws. The funeral was a massive affair. Winston and Adele were titans of the local business community. The cathedral was packed with politicians, CEOs, and socialites. I stood at the front, dressed in black, receiving condolences with a perfectly composed face. I didn't cry. My tears had dried up in the underground parking lot. Then murmurs rippled through the pews. I looked up to see Anthony walking down the aisle. He looked awful, unshaven, his suit wrinkled. But what caused the whispers wasn't his appearance. It was the woman clinging to his arm. Debbie was wearing a black dress that was entirely too short for a funeral, a dramatic lace fascinator covering half her face. She was practically leaning her entire body weight on Anthony, playing the role of the tragic, supportive partner. My mother-in-law's sister, Aunt Clara, stepped directly into the aisle, blocking their path. Get her out of here, Clara hissed, loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear. Auntie, please, Anthony croaked. I need her. I can't do this alone. You are a disgrace, Clara spat. Your parents are in those caskets because you were off playing house with this trash. If you bring her one step closer to my sister, I will have security drag you both out by your hair. Anthony flushed crimson. Debbie let out a pathetic little whimper and tugged on his sleeve. Anthony, it's okay. I'll wait outside. I don't want to cause a scene. She played the victim flawlessly. Anthony glared at his family, then at me. I just stared back, unblinking. Eventually, he escorted Debbie to the vestibule and walked up to the front row alone, sitting as far away from me as possible. After the burial, we were summoned to the offices of Sterling and Vance, the family's estate lawyers. Anthony sat slumped in a leather chair, smelling faintly of alcohol. He sat straight backed across from him. Mr. Sterling, a man who had been my father-in-law's closest confidant for 30 years, cleared his throat. I will be reading the last will and testament of Winston and Adele, he began. Anthony let out a heavy sigh. Just skip the legalese, Arthur. I know how this works. I'm the only child. Just transfer the board voting rights so I can keep the company running. Mr. Sterling looked over his reading glasses, his eyes filled with profound pity and disgust. Anthony, your parents updated their will exactly 3 days ago, the morning of the incident. Anthony frowned. What? I will read the addendum, Sterling said. He adjusted his papers. We, Winston and Adele, being of sound mind, do hereby revoke all previous wills. To our son, Anthony, we leave the sum of $1 to be paid from our estate as a symbol of our profound disappointment in his continued betrayal of his marital vows and familial duties. Anthony shot up out of his chair. What the hell is this? Sterling ignored him and continued reading. The entirety of our estate, including but not limited to our 65% controlling shares in Hopewell Enterprises, all real estate holdings, offshore trusts, and liquid assets, is hereby bequeathed to our beloved daughter-in-law Denise. She has shown us the loyalty and love of a true daughter. Should anything happen to us, we entrust our legacy to her. The silence in the room was absolute. Anthony stared at me, his mouth hanging open. You manipulated them. I did nothing, I said calmly. They made their choice. After we're gone, divorce Anthony. All of our shares, properties, will go to you. My mother-in-law's dying words echoed in my mind. She knew. She had already signed the papers, but dying in my arms solidified her resolve. This is bullshit. Anthony slammed his fists on the desk. I'm their blood. You can't do this, Arthur. I'll contest it. I'll tie it up in court for decades. You can try, Sterling said coolly. But Winston had me attach a video. Addendum, sworn affidavits from 3 independent psychiatrists confirming their mental competency, and a morality clause. Furthermore, Anthony, your parents' bank accounts have already been frozen to you. The credit cards in your name, which were tied to their accounts, have been cancelled as of noon today. Anthony backed away, looking like he had been physically struck. I have. Nothing. You have the clothes on your back, Sterling replied. And the $1 check. My secretary is printing right now. Anthony turned his furious gaze on me. You planned this. You let them die so. You could steal my company. I stood up, walked slowly over to him, and slapped him across the face so hard. My palm stung. His head snapped to the side. I begged you to come home. I whispered, my voice shaking with a rage that transcended lifetimes. I begged you to save them. You chose the woods. You chose her. You killed them, Anthony. And now, you will pay for it for the rest of your miserable, pathetic life. I walked out of the office, leaving him standing there in shock. Taking over the company was brutal, but necessary. Winston had trained me well, and the board of directors, already disgusted by Anthony's public scandals, rallied behind me. Within a week, I was firmly seated in the CEO's chair. My first order of business was dealing with the estate. I had the locks changed on our marital mansion. When Anthony tried to come home, my newly hired private security team escorted him off the premises. He was forced to move into Debbie's cramped 2-bedroom apartment. But I wasn't just sitting in boardrooms. I was working with Chavez, with Riches, illegal cell tower data pointing us in the right direction, the police cyber division focused entirely on Debbie's financials. It took 2 weeks, but they found it. Debbie had a brother, a degenerate gambler with ties to the underground loan sharks. He had been the middleman. Debbie had funneled the cryptocurrency from a shell account she set up using Anthony's credit cards a month prior. She had literally used Anthony's money to pay for his parents' assassination. Chavez called me late one Tuesday night. We got the crypto trail, he said, sounding exhausted but victorious. It links directly back to Debbie's IP address. We also squeezed the brother. He flipped faster than a pancake. He's testifying that Debbie planned the whole thing. Wanted the parents out of the way so Anthony would inherit, and she'd finally get the ring and the billions. Does Anthony know? I asked. Not yet. We're moving in to arrest her at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Don't, I said. Denise, I can't delay an arrest warrant. I don't want you to delay it, I interrupted. I want to be there. And I want Anthony to hear it from me before you put the cuffs on her. Chavez paused. You're playing with fire, Denise. Anthony is unstable. I know exactly how unstable he is, I said, remembering the feeling of his hands dragging me through the dirt in a life that now felt like a nightmare. Just give me 5 minutes in that apartment before you breach. The rain was pouring again the next morning. It felt poetic. The sky was weeping for the innocent and washing away the filth. I stood outside the door of Debbie's apartment. Plainclothes officers were positioned at the ends of the hallway. Chavez gave me a curt nod. I didn't knock. I used the master key the building manager had happily provided to the police. I stepped inside. The apartment was a mess. Empty wine bottles, takeout containers, and clothes strewn everywhere. The smell of stale alcohol and desperation hung in the air. Debbie, did you get the coffee? Anthony's voice called out from the bedroom. He walked into the living room, wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. Stopped dead when he saw me. Denise, how the hell did you get in here? He looked around frantically. Are you stalking me now? Haven't you taken enough? I haven't taken nearly enough, I said, my voice echoing in the small space. The bedroom door opened wider, and Debbie stepped out, wearing a silk robe. When she saw me, her face contorted in rage. Get out, she shrieked. You have no right to be here. Anthony, call the police. Oh, the police are already here, Debbie. I smiled thinly. They're waiting out in the hall. Anthony frowned, stepping between us. What are you talking about? Denise, if this is another one of your sick games. No games, Anthony. Just the truth. The truth about why your parents died. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, tossing it onto the coffee table. Open it. Anthony hesitated, then reached down and pulled out the papers. They were copies of the police reports, the crypto transfers, and the sworn confession from Debbie's brother. As Anthony read, the color drained from his face. His hands began to shake violently. What is this? He whispered, his voice cracking. Crypto, to the men who? What is this? It's a bank statement, Anthony, I said softly, showing that your lovely girlfriend used your credit card to buy untraceable cryptocurrency, which she then sent to the hitmen who slit your parents' throats. She didn't want a ransom. She wanted an inheritance. No, Anthony breathed, backing away from the paper as if it were radioactive. He turned to Debbie. Debbie, tell me this is a fake. Tell me she forged this to frame you. Debbie was pale as a ghost. Her eyes darted toward the door, then back to Anthony. Anthony, baby, listen to me. She's lying. She owns the police. She bought them off with your money. Her brother confessed, Anthony. I added mercilessly. He detailed exactly how. Debbie planned it. She knew they were at the country club. She knew the route. They drove home. She wanted them dead so you could be rich. Anthony, look at me. Debbie cried, grabbing his arms. I love you. I would. Never. Get off me. Anthony roared, violently shoving her away. Debbie stumbled and crashed into the wall, a framed picture shattering against the floor. Anthony looked like a cornered animal. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, completely devoid of sanity. He looked at the papers, then at Debbie, then at me. In my past life, this was the man who had dragged me into the woods. A man capable of unimaginable cruelty when pushed to the edge. And right now he had just realized that he had thrown away his devoted wife, his loving parents, and his massive fortune for a woman who had orchestrated his family's slaughter. He let out a sound that wasn't human. A scream of pure, agonizing grief and rage. He lunged at Debbie. His hands wrapped around her throat, slamming her down onto the hardwood floor. You killed them, he screamed, spittle flying from his lips. You killed my mother. You killed my father. Debbie clawed at his face, gasping for air, her eyes bulging. I stood there and watched. I watched the man who had ordered my death in another timeline slowly squeeze the life out of the woman he had loved more than me. I felt the phantom pains of my torn flesh fading away, replaced by a dark, terrible satisfaction. I want to see you suffer the same pain she went through, he had screamed at me. In the woods. Now he was the one inflicting it. He was destroying the one thing he had left. Before he could snap her neck, the apartment door was kicked open. Police. Freeze. Hands in the air. Chavez and 4 other officers swarmed the room. It took 3 grown men to pry Anthony off Debbie. She lay on the floor, coughing violently, gasping for air. Purple bruises already blooming around her neck. They slammed Anthony against the wall, cuffing him. He didn't resist. He just wept, staring at the ceiling, completely broken. An officer hauled Debbie to her feet, roughly slapping cuffs on her wrists. Deborah Vance, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder in the 1st degree and wire fraud. As they marched her out of the apartment, she locked eyes with me. There was no defiance left. Only terror. Anthony was escorted out next. As he passed me, he stopped. He looked at me, his eyes dead hollow. You knew, he whispered. You knew what she was. I knew what you both were. I replied softly. Enjoy your peace, Anthony. They led him away. The trial lasted 6 months. It was a media circus. Debbie tried to turn on her brother, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. I attended the sentencing. When the judge read her fate, she collapsed into her chair, sobbing. I felt nothing. Anthony was a different story. He was charged with attempted murder for attacking Debbie, but given the circumstances, the sudden revelation of her role in his parents' deaths, his lawyer managed to plead it down to aggravated assault. But it didn't matter. Anthony's mind had shattered in that apartment. The guilt of knowing that his affair, his refusal to answer his phone, and his blind trust in a monster had caused the brutal murder of his parents was too much for him to bear. He was transferred from county jail to a state psychiatric facility. Once a month, the facility's administrator would send me an update, as I was technically his only surviving legal contact. The letters always said the same thing. Patient is unresponsive. Suffers from severe night terrors. Frequently. Found whispering apologies to the walls. I filed the divorce papers the day he was committed. Because of his legal and mental status, and the ironclad nature of the will, it was a clean break. I was free. A year after the night my in-laws died, I drove up to the cemetery on a crisp autumn afternoon. The leaves were turning bright orange and gold. The air was cool and clean. I walked up the manicured path to the grand marble mausoleum where Winston and Adele were laid to rest. I placed a bouquet of fresh white lilies by the brass plaque bearing their names. I traced my fingers over the cold stone. I had kept my promise to them. Hopewell Enterprises was thriving. I had established a charitable foundation in their names dedicated to supporting victims of violent crimes and funding police. Cybercrime Division. I stood up, adjusting my coat against the wind. I placed my hand on my stomach. It was flat. In this life, there was no baby torn away from me in the dark. There was no terror. There was only the future. I had rewritten my destiny. I had taken the love that had blinded me, the loyalty that had killed me, and forged it into a sword. And with it, I had cut the rot out of my life. I turned my back on the graves and walked back down the hill toward my waiting car. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I wasn't afraid of the shadows in the mountains. I wasn't afraid of the wolves. I was the one who had survived.